Alright, welcome back. This time we're going to be talking about some GM tips. We did player tips just a minute ago, so we'll do GM tips now. Of course, to give good tips, we need to discuss what kind of game Daggerheart is. It is a collaborative fantasy role-playing game of incredible magic and heroic adventure. There is a big emphasis on narrative in Daggerheart, though you don't have to play the game that way. You can just play it a more, loosey-goosey, sandboxy, we're just gonna, battle monsters, and that's the plot. That's the narrative. We're killing things. That's okay. You can use it either way. It really does shine with a narrative focus, just because of some of the mechanics and some of the player resources and things like that. So, anyway, let's get on to the tips. First tip, and this is coming from we've done almost 30 sessions now, a lot of which are on the YouTube, so make sure to check them out. But you'll see a lot of the tips I struggle with personally. So I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. This is what I've learned in my time as a fledgling GM. With Daggerheart, don't over prep. Because of the way the hope and fear mechanic work, things can swing pretty hard. Generally, because of the statistics of using 2d12 and plus bonuses, generally your players are going to succeed more often than fail. Now the hope and fear is 50-50, but we all know there are those times when you can flip a coin and get 10 heads. So there are times when things can get very fearful very quick. So that's why I would say don't over prep, as in prep way far in advance and think that, don't do a ton of prep in hoping that they go to that point. It's better to do Daggerheart on a game-by-game basis. Essentially, before we play our game, the day of, the week before as well, I usually sit down, write out max one paragraph about what they're doing. Because essentially, I'm planning the first hour of the session, and then the other 2 to 3 hours is completely just what happens. So it is I would say it's improv heavy game. But again, like I said before, you can run it a little more roadie. We're just gonna kill monsters, as long as that's what everybody's in for. Then of course, do what you do. Tip number 2, let your players help build the world. Session 0 is I think a very cool thing in this game. In other TTRPGs, it seems like, from what I've seen, people tend to not do as much in the Session 0. It's more like, oh, I already made my character. Or Session 0 is more like introductions. Daggerheart Session 0, because of how quick character creation is a great time for everybody to sit down, make characters, and then help build out the world that you're going to be in. That doesn't mean that you as a GM can't come in with a prepared world, but leave spots for them to maybe pick their hometown, or they may like a town that you made already and say, well, I just want to be from your town. And you say, okay, that's cool. Who are some people that you knew in this town? And you've got them, coming up with some NPCs for you. But again, Session 0 is a great time to let your players actually partake in building the world, and it kind of fosters a deeper connection. This is something we did not do, and I wish we would have. We're doing more of it as the game goes on. For example, when we got to the character in the game, Tugla, when we got to her hometown, I essentially asked Tugla, the person who plays Tugla's online name is also Tugla, so it's a little confusing. I asked Tug, where he said, he asked if there's a library, and I was like, is there? let them decide those things. And generally it's like people worry, well, what if my players take advantage of it? Well, that's a group dynamic problem. That's not a game problem. That's where it goes to finding players that are going to vibe with what you're putting down. But essentially, yeah, even if you don't do as much of that world building in the beginning, let people do it later on. And it's really fun whenever you let them decide these things, because, you know, why not? This collaborative is a big word they use when describing this game. Okay, number 3, and for this we're going chapter 3 of the core rulebook, where it is, I think this is GM Principles. Yeah, I thought all these were really good, so I figured I'd throw them in here. Following these GM principles will help the whole table have the best possible experience playing this game. Begin and end with the fiction. Essentially, the fiction is what drives, you know, this game is designed with the intention for the fiction and the narrative to be the driving force. Collaborate at all times, especially during conflict. That's classic. Most GMs do that already, where it's like, oh, what does it look like as you kill the beast? You know, that's what they're talking about. Ask for their inputs. Another cool thing you can do is like ask people, what does it smell like? Ask them the senses when you walk in a place. You say you enter a tavern. Player 1, what does it smell like in here? And they, oh, it smells like old wood and old alcohol, obviously. And you're like, oh, okay. You know, player 2, is it busy in here today? And then, you know, it's not so, but, you know, let them collaborate with you. Fill the world with life, wonder, and danger. So this is where you get to do the picking and choosing. You know, have things for players to interact with and take action with. The danger that's a good one, because this game, it's relatively hard to kill players, so feel free to go at them. They'll more than likely survive if you're using the point system that the game gives you for designing encounters. They'll most likely live, so make it dangerous if that's the setting you're in. Wondrous is like, and I struggle with this, like, give it some little pizzazz when you're, you know, describing stuff to them. And if you do that in turn, when it comes to you asking them what they think, they'll bring that level as well. Ask questions and incorporate the answers. I think I touched on that at Collaborate. Ask them, how do you feel in this moment? What are you doing right now? You know, you can even ask them what an NPC does. This is an NPC they made in the beginning. Say, oh, how would they react to this situation? Give them that agency, because that makes the world more real to them. Make every role important. This one, I think people read this, and because I read this once, and it became in my head, I was like, I was afraid to ask them to roll. Excuse me. I was afraid to ask them to roll because I'm like, well, the roles should be important. I think what that means, essentially, is don't make them roll for every little thing. You'll make them roll for stuff, even if it may not feel like the most significant thing. But if it's like, you know, I wouldn't make them roll to climb a 6-foot fence. You know, they're adventurers. More than likely, they would be able to do it. And there's 3 in the party, so the other 2 could boost them up and help. Like, I'm not going to say, okay, roll an agility for me with a DC of 5, because it's super easy. Just let them do it, you know. Play to find out what happens. Essentially, that's saying let the dice guide the narrative. Play the system and let that hope and fear kind of steer the ship. like I said, you can generally count on success, and you can use that to plan, but hope and fear the consequences of the situations. That's where you're playing to find out what happens. And hold on gently, of course, just meaning it is a collaborative game. Let your players play, and when you let them play, and you are playing playing with them, it all feels a lot better. And then also, I wrote down some stuff here. So this would be tip number 4. Don't be afraid to allow players to do something unconventional, like using a combat ability in a non-combat scenario to do something unique, if they're spending the resources. So, in the previous video, I used the example of I Am Your Shield, which is in the, was it Valor domain? It's what Guardians and Seraphs can use it, I think. And essentially it's like, mechanically it's a combat skill where they jump in front of somebody and take the damage. But like, if you're in a situation where one party member is getting like yelled at or being sussed, you can say, hey GM, can I use I Am Your Shield? I'll mark my resources to kind of get in front of them and take the attention off of them, so maybe they can get away, or like allow your players to do creative things, even if maybe it's not 100% written. Don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit. And then, you can always have the conversation like, this time I'll allow it. It may not be a regular thing, and most players will be understanding. And next tip, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is tip number 5. If you want to over prep, kind of jumping back to number 1 a little bit, if you want to over prep locations and large overarching plot points. Like, what the big bad is trying to do X amount of days, weeks, months from now. That is okay to plan that far ahead. Because I've kind of known how the culmination of our campaign for a year at this point. I came up with that pretty early. But as far as everything in the middle, I have no idea. I have no idea how they're going to get there, when they're going to get there. If they don't get there, it's still going to, like, because you can also utilize like countdowns and stuff like that for these big overarching plot points if you want to. Yeah, if you want to over prep, if you're really feeling if I know what it's like when the juice is flowing, prep the locations and the overarching plot points. Locations, because it's always nice it's fun to world build and be able to answer all the weird little questions people ask when you come into a town. And then of course, it's a good chance in like session 0 as well to like let your players really, if they want to build more, rather than just say, I'm from Oaktown. Okay? It's like, do you want to tell me more about Oaktown? Like, we can over prep this a little bit and build out the whole thing in case we go there. And, a player may be into that. And again, bringing them back to focus on the experience that you, the GM, are running for them. And with the plot points, you could also do, if you really want to over prep, if the juice is really flowing, branching plot points based on like pass or fail or hope and fear, which is because like I said, they'll succeed most of the time as opposed to failing. So you can kind of have branching plot points and maybe a couple of different ways that the story could end, just so that way you're not scrambling when they branch. If you're like, oh, in this spot I was expecting here's an encounter they're gonna have. There's a hope route and a fear route. If they lose the encounter and things go horribly, I'm gonna go down the fear path. If things go good, then we'll go down the hope. And then it's like, if you really want to get in there, because I know, like I said, I know how it is. If you really want to get in there, just focus on locations, overarching plot points. Last tip, be honest with your players about issues that you have. Pacing, balancing, behavior. That's what I wrote here. Pacing. Our campaign currently so this campaign was the first campaign I've ever GM'd, and so pacing is something I have a hard time with, where I'm like, so if you look on the channel, it's the Nameless, which technically all of the live plays on my channel are the same story, but I cut it off and we kind of started a season for the full release. I made a kind of dungeon crawl and I overplanned it. It was about 8 hours of combat. Maybe even more. And really, in Daggerheart, that's a lot of combat. Like they were fighting hard. And it was really fun, and then there are times when I was maybe wanting my players to be a little more sandboxy, but they were wanting a little more not railroad, but a little more guide track, like for me to push the pace. So pacing's a tricky one. It really depends on the table that you're at. Some people want to live in the world. They want to sandbox it and go on a day-by-day basis. Some people want, and I think this GM best practices I was seeing, keep the story moving forward, cut to the action. I think this is top tier tip, because one, keeping the story moving forward. If your players aren't saying anything, say, hey, if anybody like to do anything, let me know. If not, we're gonna move. Nobody says anything, boom, next beat. Cut to the action. In that same vein, you feel like things are kind of going a little slow here, you say, hey, anybody got anything that they need to do? No? Okay, boom, we're cutting to the next scene. Just make sure any more of these, all this is general stuff that's in I try not to just straight up try to give some actual tips from my own brain. Balancing. I think Daggerheart balance is a weird thing because it is a heroic, spectacular narrative game. The characters are super powerful. If you have the Sage domain, so if you're a Druid or Ranger, you can be a tank with one ability, essentially. The armor beetles are crazy. Just watch the live play and you'll see Baguette, who plays Asterius. You'll see me give him a hard time about his beetles because anyway, it's very funny. But like, discuss these things to let your players know, like, hey, like, you have to balance it to play against the players, but you should let them know when things like, hey, man, I feel like I'm not getting y'all good enough. Like, you're getting through these pretty easy. I'm gonna crank up the difficulty. Just convey the message, so that way they're not caught off guard. And especially in the beta, oh my gosh, it got really bad. The way armor worked, Asterius was a freaking beast. he was impossible to kill. And get back on topic. Lastly, behavior. So be honest with your players about behavior. When we first started, so Tuglo, this is his first time playing a TTRPG, and Baguette he's played D&D and stuff a lot as well. There was a point where I kind of had to tell them, like, because I messed up And then like I was feeling something from them where basically I was like, hey, this is not adversarial. We're telling a story together. We're all friends. Because essentially while the beta was changing, I kind of like randomly implemented new beta rules in the middle of combat because I remembered they existed. And so like things got a little tense, but we talked to each other, and that's all it took was a simple conversation. Next week, no problem. Sometimes all it takes is being honest with your players about the issues that you got. And if talking can't solve the problem, as the GM, you have every right to let a player know, talk to your other players, say, hey, I don't think they're gelling with us as a group, and get everybody else's feedback, and you can ask them to leave, and you can either cold turkey it or say, look, I don't think things are working out, but let's have one more session and we'll find a way for your character to exit the game. You can always be civil about stuff like this. You don't have to get crazy with it. But anyway, I'll go over the tips again real quick. For GMs in Daggerheart, don't over prep. Let your players help build the world. Session 0. Also check chapter 3 of the core rulebook. Don't be afraid to allow players to do something unconventional, like using a combat ability in a non-combat scenario if they spend their resources. If you want to overprep locations and large overarching plot points, and be honest with your players about the issues you're having. Those is gonna, and like I said, myself, I'm trying to adhere to these tips as well. You're more than welcome to check out our live plays and keep me in line. Again, I'd appreciate a like, sub, a share, a comment. Let me know if you have any good tips for GMs or players. I'd love to see it. Thanks for watching. Peace.